No matter how steep in the struggle you are not alone, and we are here for you today and every tomorrow.
Since 1989.
Ayo. Hello, and welcome to You Matter Here, our Minnesota Transitions Charter School podcast, where we elevate the voices of our people, dig deeper into our big ideas, and explore how we show up for ourselves and each other in order to make magic happen. I am your host, Wendy Lorenz-Walraven, the Director of Equity and Diversity here at MTCS. My hope is that as we spend time together, we will have an opportunity to explore three key questions. Who am I? Who are we? And who are we to each other? As it is the intersection of these questions that informs the assumptions we make, drives our behavior, and impacts our relationships with ourselves and with others. I'd like to introduce today's guest, Catie Locker, the Dean of Students, Administrative Assistant, and Lunch Lady at P.E.A.S.E Academy. Welcome, Catie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time and your willingness to share parts of yourself with us. I look forward to connecting with you and deepening our understanding of the heart of the P.E.A.S.E community. So let's get curious. Catie, would you be willing to share a little bit about yourself and how you joined the MTCS community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a person in long-term recovery, and, in being part of a recovery community, I met the director of P.E.A.S.E probably 10 years ago now. And about 6 years ago, he recruited me from the restaurant industry. I was the general manager of a restaurant in my hometown. And I had no plans of leaving that industry whatsoever. And I've definitely never planned on working in education. My mom was an educator for 31 years. And while she's amazing, I just never saw that route for myself. I also never imagined working with people in recovery. There's a lot of powerlessness, a lot of heartbreak, and somehow I ended up in both. Right. And I cannot see myself ever leaving. There is such a draw and a, focus and a purpose, at P.E.A.S.E. And so here I am.
Yeah. I love that. One of the questions I was going to ask you a little bit later, but might fit in better right here, is what continues to bring you back to P.E.A.S.E, especially knowing that was never in your intention to find yourself in a place like that every day.
So definitely the kids. And it's hard because the beauty is that they graduate. That's the ideal. But the kids, the relationships with my coworkers, and the relationships we form with the kids each year, it's such a beautiful thing to get to be, a consistent person in somebody's life, even if it's brief, right? And all the different relationships, good and sometimes, questionable in terms of attitude with teenagers, but it is beautiful to get to develop that with them and be someone positive, or hopefully positive for them. And just the consistency that I get to bring, that I hope to bring, at least, they know that I'm going to be behind my desk, that I'm going to put out breakfast, I'm going to feed them lunch, that we have our banter depending on who it is, and that, I'm going to be there every single day, and that the hope is that they're there too. Yeah,
for sure. What is it like for you to be able to bring parts of your own personal story into work with you every day? As you mentioned, being someone in long-term recovery and having that perspective to be able to offer young people, I think is really unique. And one of the things that P.E.A.S.E really brings to our community that's different.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an honor to be able to share pieces of my experience. I got into recovery at 19, and unfortunately I came in pregnant. And so some of my clear messages are about, birth control and healthy relationships, or what unhealthy relationships look like. And just getting to share that with both, or with any gender identity. I didn't have that openness within reason, and I didn't have someone, explaining to me that like what unhealthy relationships look like, you know,
Right.
and setting that example and empowering me to set boundaries and those types of things. And so it's nice to be in a small enough setting where that is applicable and that is part of our daily conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine for young people hearing and being with you every day to see again, just like what you have done with yourself and your life and how you are able to give back to community, I would imagine instills a lot of hope for young people to know that they can make it to a different point in their life.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. And I'm also honored to get to connect with their parents. While my kids aren't old enough to go through or to have struggled with addiction, I do get to share from my perspective as a kid who, you know, put their parents through the ringer.
Right.
And I get to use my parents' examples and our, you know, history to share with other parents. And it's really sweet. My mom will sometimes attend a graduation at the end of the year, and certain parents, I've really used her and our examples, and they get to meet her, and she's like a little celebrity because I've gotten to use our history, good and bad, to help empower both students and parents.
Yeah.
Their stuff.
That's really incredible. And again, I think too, you know, one of the things that I talked a little bit about with Rufus when he was in was just really about the fact that you're able to bring such honesty into these spaces and sort of like open up the curtain behind, especially when you're looking at use and you're looking at addiction, that again, that there's so much storytelling or evading or lying or abandoning yourself or abandoning other people in that being able to come to a place every single day that just sort of centers that truth and the real experience and what rupture and repair looks like. I think, again, many of us have limited experiences with being able to work through struggle with someone and come out on the other side and really experience what unconditional levels of support look like, which I think is really what you do provide for young people at P.E.A.S.E.
Absolutely. Like, and Rufus is amazing at it, of all people. You know, goodness forbid my kids end up, you know, struggling with addictions, but I would absolutely trust someone like Rufus to process with our whole family through that whole endeavor. But yeah, like the processing from start to finish, you know, and having that door open on a daily basis, and also teaching them, you know, that there is maybe not a conclusion to the issue, but a conclusion to move past, you know, the emotions for right now and then function, you know, through the rest of the day is something that our kids, you know, of course struggle with, anybody struggles with, but giving them an opportunity to like, all right, we're going to start here. Here's some issues. Let's talk about it. You know, Rufus calls it like chapter A, chapter B, chapter C for today. And then we'll start again tomorrow. But getting to have that space and that time to process things, and then, you know, empowering them to, you know, okay, big stuff came out, and now we're going to go, you know, do math class. Yeah, right. You know, but there is a door open for another time, and they believe, you know, that they will have more space and more time to process further, and trust us to do that.
Yeah. Trust you to make the space for what is important in the moment, and also always hold space that like math and science are always going to be there. And that's the goal, to get back to that. But I think you create more space again for that processing than they would really have anywhere else, you know, in a place that really does honor both like the human part of who we are and the emotional experiences that we go through, and the academics that we're hoping that everyone succeeds in, right?
Yeah, that's the hope.
Yeah, totally. You talk a little bit about, you know, sort of trusting Rufus. And I think that is, again, one of the things that is really unique about the P.E.A.S.E. community is the trust and the relationships that you as staff have with one another. So would you be willing to talk a little bit about sort of how you collaborate as a team to support and respond to the needs of your community? Because again, I think how you function each as individuals within your team is beautiful, but how you all function together as a community is really what I think makes a lot of magic happen.
Thanks. Yeah, and I agree. I think that, you know, building the trust over the years, of course, I've known Michael and Rufus from outside of work for a little bit longer, but not as personally now as I do having worked with them for so long, especially Michael. I literally work side by side with him every single day for the last, you know, going into our 6th year. And I wouldn't have it any other way. But acknowledging who we are as individuals, you know, anywhere from, you know, gender identity, skin color, recovery time, recovery practices, personal parental practices and struggles that we have trusted each other enough to share over the years. And also acknowledging like their specialties. Michael has been around for a really long time and both in both in recovery and in the P.E.A.S.E community, especially. He's seen, all the ebbs and flows of the student body, and they do come in cycles, over the years. And then there's Rufus, who has a chemical dependency degree and the experience he has with working with different populations, even before he came to P.E.A.S.E. And even now that he is at P.E.A.S.E, his second job is with women in a treatment program. And so it's just like the approaches that he has and the observations I've made over the years for both of them and others too, but I work mostly with them in support roles downstairs, getting to observe and mimic, and learn and absorb their approaches. And also in that observation, learning to trust their approaches has really allowed us to work as a team, and also gives us the opportunity like, hey, this is the issue that's come up. Let's brainstorm it as a team. Who's going to do what? All right, that makes sense. And then we go from there. And either it's approach it cohesively in a unit, or it's like, all right, you're doing that part. I'm doing the, communication part, and Michael's doing the charting, he's that's the reporting part. And even beyond just the downstairs support floor, we have amazing people upstairs. Steve Clock, who has been with the district for, I think 14 years. He was a teacher when I was part of Minnesota Virtual High School. And just like his softness, his sweetness, his, like effective approaches to both the paperwork side of things, also student interaction. And then we have, a very special person, Sarah Roberts, who comes from a recovery high school herself, but having her perspective as someone who grew up and has been in recovery since such a young age, I come in at 19, but there's still, she comes in at 14 or 15, and that, speaks a lot. And so to have her not only as a part of our team for her own experiences, but also to have her, belief in us enough to be a part of our team and stay a part of our team, I'm like, okay, we're doing something right. And beyond her experience, being in a sober high school and being in recovery since 14, she's just an amazing teacher. Yeah. And so I get to learn from how she connects with her students in an advisory role, conducting a classroom, which I'm not a classroom teacher, but I still I get to observe and absorb how that works and how effective it is for them. And the, how much the students seek her out for those reasons.
Absolutely. She really does craft and create her lessons along with her kids, right? Like they're absolutely maximizing student voice and student participation in the process of what is important to be learning and talking about, which again makes all the difference.
And the consistency she creates. Like the kids know that they're going to come there. There's a do now question. They often, share it out loud without even being asked. And then they ask each other, are we going to read together today? Are we going to read separate today? And there's just a flow to the classroom. And our kids come from a place where there isn't necessarily or hasn't been a lot of flow in their life, right? And that consistency and that structure. And for them to not only participate in it, but almost seem to enjoy it, it gives me, hope that we are fulfilling their needs as a whole person, not just, a student, not just as a person, young person in recovery, but as a whole person.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that approach and that space and that structure, right? That structure and flow can be really liberating. I think sometimes we think about it as being really restrictive, and sometimes we need that anchor of, again, some kind of predictability that gives us access to the spontaneity within us, that often I think gets kind of swallowed or hidden when we are overcome with fear and anxiety about what's coming and what's coming next because we don't know, right? And again, when you put that into the context of recovery, there's so many of those things swirling around all the time that being able to anchor yourself in a simple thing like the do now and knowing that there is an expectation to read either together or right. All of those things might seem really simple, but they are the things that really help young people stay regulated and adults, right? Like that, being able to have a routine or have some kinds of things that are to be expected helps us be more flexible in other ways. Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we were just chatting a little bit about is again, some of that identity work that comes with being a young person, and kind of what the expectations or the norms are for what that looks like for people. Can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you, or for what young people might be navigating?
Right. Well, not only young people, but their entire family, like the grief and loss process of, switching schools is huge. I mean, I played soccer for, the soccer club since the age of 4, and my family spent numerous hours, of their lives for a very long time, over a decade on that soccer field with me, and the identity that I had along with that, as a team member, as a team leader, as an athletic person, and how, first smoking cigarettes and then drug use took that away from me. And there's so much identity in the recovery community with that. I mean, we even have professional sport players that wind up at our doors, or the doors of any recovery community. So the switch of not only the student, the grief and loss portion of losing that because of drug use and abuse, but the grief and loss that they experience, but also that their families go through, and as an adult, it's like, okay, yeah, you were part of a sports club. That's great. But as a student, as a young person, as an adolescent, like that was who I was, and losing that, and my family losing that, and then not only losing it, but then having to switch gears, switch schools, lose that piece of who we were and who we have been our whole lives, switching over to the next step. And what's that next step? And swallowing that pill of what is that? Care and treatment, aftercare, and then potentially switching school environments. That's huge for families to undertake. And not just the student, but the whole entire family.
Right. Yeah, because there's a loss of identity for the parents as well, right? And a definite shift and need for how you talk about your kid and what they're doing and what they're up to, right? And I would imagine for anybody who's, anticipating spending time with family communities over the next couple of weeks, that causes some anxieties as well, right? It's sort of like, what do we say to people? And are we open and honest about it? And what does that mean, right? Like, and I'm sure parents also wonder, like, what did I do? What can I do? So it's a big, complicated emotional experience.
Absolutely. And how as a parent do you cushion that experience for yourself, for your student, in your own family, in your own community? My poor mom had to fudge my graduation date. I was supposed to graduate, from 2011 from the home district that I had attended my whole life. And that just wasn't going to happen, and thankfully I did transfer to Minnesota Virtual High School and graduated in 2014. And my mom did get honest about that eventually. But, facing that, navigating that, I know wasn't easy for her. My mom's a very honest person, but navigating not only, my addiction and what that looked like at the time of my graduation, but then navigating how we present it afterwards. Right. Even still, I struggle with people ask me how old I am. Well, what year were you supposed to graduate? Well, 2011, but other things happen. How that's framed, anywhere from sharing your graduation date with family, extended family, the neighbor down the street who, you thought your kids were going to graduate together. Your graduation year changes, your school of choice changes, your diploma changes, lots of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, like, a graduation date can also be perceived as like a pretty typical question to ask people, right? And only recently, when I then disclosed I graduated in 1999, and the look of horror that I received by the students that I'm disclosing that to, which indicates my age, I hadn't really thought about it, right? But again, something as sort of concrete as a graduation date can really disclose a lot of personal information.
Absolutely. Whether we see it now that we're older or not, but there's such a focus on different identity pieces, like a graduation date or like a where'd you graduate from. And some of our families are ready and willing, to say, well, this is where my student is at. This is where we've been at, and this is where we are now. We're happily at P.E.A.S.E Academy, and it's great. And then there's other families that are, we're maybe more of a placeholder to get their kids stabilized, and then they do end up graduating from their home district. And that's okay too. We support that. Our goal is to provide a safe and sober education platform, get your senior to their hopefully as close to their graduation date as we can, and then transition with your family in whatever way is most comfortable. You know, and we have had kids go back and walk the stage with their homeschools, and we fully support that. We're just grateful that we were able to be a part of what got them there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you definitely do provide, I think, a lot of opportunities for support post-graduation for young people, right? Rufus talked a little bit about the Parents of P.E.A.S.E community, and that you do have people that sort of come back year and after year to provide support to community, right? I think that that's something, again, that's unique within the recovery community of really utilizing supports and then being an active person who puts energy back into that system to be able to continue that cycle of support for people.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, our focus is creating a community, an education community focused on recovery and abstinence for our students. And we fully acknowledge that there is, you know, a need for parental connection. And so thankfully, Rufus and Michael, you know, have provided the opportunity with Parents of P.E.A.S.E for, you know, not only current parents or prospective parents, but former parents to come and continue to get that guidance and that connection, because it is a family disease. You know, there is a family recovery period, and that can be long, you know, years. Even with positive, consistent recovery progress, it can still be years that the family needs to recover. And so whatever we can do, you know, whether it be, you know, family sessions with Rufus, or especially Parents of P.E.A.S.E sessions also with Rufus to support that for them, we're here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I would imagine, and hopefully maybe we'll have an opportunity to talk to some parents at some point too, of what that support has really meant to them, and sort of what tools and things that they've really gained out of there to provide better support and connection for their kids when through the span of time, right? You don't find yourself in recovery overnight, and you don't find a new path for yourself overnight either.
So support even for each other, just the common knowledge that they're not alone, you know, like the what feels like some insanity that they're going through, you know, oh, that other kid is going through it too, or putting them through it too. And just getting that common ground, you know, and then support as well. You know, there's just, it can be lonely, you know, for parents, even as a unit, if you have a 2-parent unit. So getting outside of just themselves and getting some outside supports and some insight. You know, we want to foster that whenever possible. Yeah,
that is a beautiful message to send to our listeners. So my final question for you is, what would you say to a parent or a young person who is struggling to decide if P.E.A.S.E is the place for them?
Yeah, that's a hard question. Well, it's an easy question and it's a hard question, because I want to make sure I get everything in there that I hope, you know, touches somebody to come and to give us a chance. But that's my main message, is give it a chance. You know, for the students, I hope you give yourself a break long enough to, you know, not only involve yourself in the P.E.A.S.E community, but or immerse yourself in the P.E.A.S.E community, but also give yourself just a break from the life that led you here, for even the possibility of coming to P.E.A.S.E. You know, give it a chance. P.E.A.S.E may be a smaller community, and there's benefits to that. The parents, you know, I always want to thank the parents that have already trusted us with their kids, and I want to encourage the other parents. You know, I hope you do give us a chance to give your student the opportunity to thrive, to take a break, you know, from, again, whatever led them here in the first place, or led the whole family here in the first place. You know, a lot of us work here because we believe in the message, and we've worked here for multiple years because we still believe in what we're doing. And I just would hope that everyone gives themselves and gives us the opportunity to show the benefits of what a recovery community can do, and give us the chance to provide give us the chance to provide a sober education environment with the recovery supports, you know, for your kid, and what that can do. You know, beyond just getting them credit, beyond just, you know, supporting their recovery, but as a whole, what that can do for their kid.
Yeah, absolutely. What would your mom tell them? What would your mom say?
Well, she would say that she wished she knew about this for me back in the day. You know, she would empower them to stick to their guns and give it a try, you know, and she would just want them to feel empowered in, sticking it out and trusting their gut, and giving their kid the opportunity to flourish and see their kid probably in ways that they haven't seen their kid in a long time.
Yeah.
A little bit happier, hopefully, a little more consistent, a little more open, a little bit more willing to connect, not only with, of course, the P.E.A.S.E community, but hopefully reconnect with them, as a family member.
Yeah. I think that is, again, an overwhelming message, right? That this community is about finding our ways back to ourselves and to each other, right? That connection is the key, right? It is connection is the antidote for a lot of things. And so being able to really put priority and focus and intention on that, right? You do a lot of circles throughout your day and throughout your week, really giving opportunities for every person in your community to share where they're at, to share what they're thinking about, struggling with, what they're celebrating. And again, I think all of those pieces really just help young people flourish and find access points to their future that they may not have seen before. So, did you have anything to add?
I don't think so. I did. It's gone.
Dang it. I'm so sorry. No, that's okay. No, I appreciate so much that you were willing to come over here, especially on a snowy day. And just share, you are such a beautiful gift to our community, every single day. And I get the profound privilege of being able to see you all work, and when I'm in your space and when I get to spend time with all of you, and it's a really special time for me too. So thank you again for all you do.
Well, thank you, and thanks for making space for all of this, and and hopefully attracting more families. And that's the hope, is that people know we exist, whether they come or not, that they know, so that when somebody does need us, that they can find us.
Absolutely, because we're right here. Perfect. For all of you listening, I appreciate you tuning in and for your willingness to listen for understanding. That's what it's all about. So stay curious, ask more questions, and until next time, this is your host, Wendy Lorenz-Waller.